So back in October or November, I went to Finland and I demoed BattleTech to a couple of friends and family members as well. And I want to talk about that experience here, but I just haven't had the chance to talk about it quite yet. I've had some other stuff to do. So I figured now's a good time as any. Just talking about some ideas on why do we demo games to people and what's the best way to go about it when it comes to BattleTech. Like, which rules do you leave out? Which matchups do work? That sort of thing. So maybe you have some ideas for your own demo games if you want to demo BattleTech to other people. So you've got a game of Armored Combat, maybe you got the beginner box, maybe you've bought some Lance packs or something, and now you want to introduce some more people to BattleTech. How do we do it? Well, let's talk about it. Now, the first thing, of course, is the question, why do we want to demo our favorite games to other people? Players who've never played them, who've never played a miniature game perhaps. Why do we want to do it? Well, we want to share our hobby with them. We want to play with them. In a good scenario, they like the game and they wouldn't mind playing again. So that's pretty great. Fantastic scenario is they actively ask you to play with them again. And the best scenario, of course, they want to dive in and buy their own stuff. That's the best possible reaction you can get to a demo game. So I think to maximize that, you want to maximize the most fun parts of BattleTech. If you watch my channel, you might have seen my video on what I think are the best parts of BattleTech. And in short, in my opinion, it's damage, blowing stuff up, punching mechs in the face, and of course the very important tactical gameplay of movement and positioning. Those are the most fun parts of playing BattleTech. And for a lot of people, winning is also a lot of fun. That depends on people, but I would say that most people do enjoy winning. So those are the stuff you want to maximize. Now, what are the least fun parts of BattleTech? I would say that BattleTech at its worst is when you're just trying to shoot at your enemies and you're not hitting, you're not doing anything, nothing's happening, or that you are hitting your enemies but nothing's still happening, like you're doing damage that doesn't really do anything. So that's the part that you want to minimize. I also think ammo tracking is very boring and I always just forget about it when I play BattleTech. So let's try to maximize those fun elements here. I would say that you should avoid 1v1 mech combat, because I would say that's a little bit boring, especially with intro tech stuff that you probably want to be playing with on a demo game. Because 1v1 games tend to devolve into people just jumping around or trying to get behind each other. There's very little strategy involved, and it's very much depending on who wins initiative. A lance versus lance is going to be too slow for a beginner and too complicated. My suggestion is 2 versus 2. So you can play, for example, you can, as the Gamemaster, you can play 2 mechs against a beginner's 2 mechs, or maybe 2 mechs of your own versus 1 mech piloted by one person and another mech piloted by a second person, or something like that. Or maybe you could grab a 4th person to pilot the 4th mech as well. So that's my suggestion. What kinds of mechs? I would leave out assault mechs, absolutely. They just generally take too long to die, and that's going to make the games a little bit boring. The other part of it is, of course, that they do carry a lot more weapons, so you can destroy mechs quicker, but then you have to hit, and that's, if you do the incorrect decisions here, you might just make the game very, very long. I would also leave heavies out. Heavies and assaults are going to have very long lists of weapons that they're going to be able to use, and that's something you want to avoid, in my opinion. It's going to be very confusing for the newbie player to choose between 10 different weapons and trying to figure out where everything is. So that's one of the reasons I would leave assaults and heavies out as well. Lightest lights might be a little bit too easy to kill, especially in the hands of a new player. It's not going to be very much fun for the new player if you just destroy their mech immediately. So I would definitely go with medium mechs, maybe some of the heaviest lights, something like maybe a panther or a wolfhound, that sort of thing. And of course, I would just go with intro check every time. Just try to avoid anything that has special rules that you have to look up in the rulebook. Just intro stuff, the most basic stuff. The most people who play BattleTech are going to be able to play with these rules anyway. So that's what you want to go with. Now, which mechs do you want to play in a demo game? I think you want to have mechs that are very forgiving, that you can make mistakes with. You can take a couple of hits and they still keep going, and they have a wide variety of weapons to use. So you have to use different things, and ones that actually also want to get up close and hit enemies. I ran a couple of demo games and they always had the same mechs on both sides, and I had pretty good experiences with the newbies getting to play a Wolverine, just a basic Wolverine, and a Shadowhawk, also the basic one. Now, I know a lot of people are going to go, Shadowhawk, that's a rubbish mech. Yeah, I know. That's the mascot of this channel, but hear me out. Both Wolverine and Shadowhawk are great all-arounders. So, both have to try a little bit of everything. They have AC, they have mediums, they have missiles, and both like to get up close and personal and punch and kick the enemy, especially the Shadowhawk, because it's lacking in the weapons department. So you get a lot of different weapon profiles and ranges as well, so they have to look at the different ranges. They don't have to worry about heat if they don't jump at all, which might be a little bit of a problem, but I guess the big problem here, which you might notice, and if you've played BattleTech a little bit, is that, of course, the standard variants of Wolverine and Shadowhawk lack any high damage weapons. I mean, the most spectacular one is the Wolverine's SRM6, and that can do 12 points of damage, which isn't massive or anything. Oh well. That is a little bit annoying, and I feel like the newbies might be a little bit annoyed if you take something that has some spectacular weapons. They're like, hey, how come my weapons do this much damage and yours does that? And, well, maybe you can use that as a way to get them to play another game, because they want to try a different mech that has more destructive power. Also, both mechs can take a beating and carry on. So that's my ideas for the newbie mechs. Maybe you could take something else as well. I would say something like maybe an Enforcer could be a good one instead of the Shadowhawk. Of course, that's going to need a little bit more work on the heat department, but it does have a slightly more exciting range of weaponry on there. So, what are you going to run as the opposing force against your newbies? Well, I would go absolutely with less battle value. Doesn't have to be a lot, but you want to have your newbies to have the upper hand. I would say keep the amount of mechs on both sides the same, but just have a little less battle value. Like I said, winning is fun, so you do want to give your newbies like a test, but you do want them to win optimally. So that is what you want to do, in my opinion. I would absolutely go with something that's less balanced, something that's where if you destroy the other or cripple the other mech, the other one's going to be in trouble. But if you play them well, you might win. but you're the demoer playing to get people interested in the game. You don't have to play optimally. My suggestion would be a long-range mech. Maybe not like a support mech like an archer or something like that, or like a trebuchet, but something like a vindicator, maybe a griffin, and a short-range mech, maybe a Jenner or something like that. Like a heavy light mech. It has quite a bit of power, but you have to get up close and personal with the enemies to make use of it. So now in this situation, if the newbies take out the Jenner that gets a little bit too close to them, now the other one's going to be in trouble. Or if they focus on the vindicator and they take that one out, then the Jenner is going to be in trouble. So I think that's a nice way of making sure that those all-arounder mechs are able to gang up on your mechs and destroy them one by one and win. Okay, we're going to do 2 versus 2, some medium mechs, maybe some heavy light mechs. But now the question becomes, what parts of BattleTech do you want to show to a first-timer? I mean, that's going to depend slightly on how experienced your demo partners are going to be. Are they tabletop gamers? Are they board game gamers? Are they any kind of gamer? So that might affect your choices a little bit, but what I would leave out of a first demo game is, first off, jumping, because jumping is something that I noticed as a new player, and I've noticed that as well, that a lot of new players tend to jump all the time, and that's going to actually make the game slower, because you're going to be hitting less and they're going to be hitting less, and you're going to be moving around the map so much that it doesn't really, I don't think it's conducive to a good demo game. Even if you pick mechs that have jump jets, I would not jump. I would just leave it out totally. I would also absolutely leave ammo management away. It's not relevant in a large majority of one-off games, right? And also, I would probably leave out mechs that rack up huge amounts of heat. So, mechs that maybe heat up a little bit by alpha striking, those are the kinds of mechs I'd choose. Perhaps you as the demoer could have mechs that heat up so you can demonstrate the concept, but I would allow the newbies to play mechs where they don't have to worry about it too much. However, I do have to say they should heat up a little bit, just a little bit, because then you're going to get into the idea of picking and choosing your weapons a little bit, because I noticed I picked mechs for my enemies that didn't heat up at all, even if alpha striking, and especially if they don't jump at all, they just don't heat up, and that just ended up with them firing every single one of their weapons on every turn. I mean, that's not a horrible thing, but that is a thing. So, now you finally got your mechs. And how do you play? Should you, as the demoer, play unoptimally? I would say, to some extent, yeah. You should switch the targets from time to time, because if you're an experienced BattleTech player, you do want to focus fire on something you want to take out, but if it starts to look like one of the newbie mechs is taking a lot of damage, switch the target. You want these people to play this game again with you. You don't want to just wipe them out, right? So switch targets. What about ammo or head hits? That does happen in BattleTech. Well, I would say that a newbie getting their battle mech destroyed totally in one turn is not going to be a great feeling for them. They're just going to be out of the game. So you can always just allude to the fact that, hey, in this game this would happen right now, but it's a demo game. I want you guys to do more. So let's just say it hit the leg or arm or whatever and didn't destroy the ammo or something. That's totally right, in my opinion, in demo games. I had a bit of luck in that none of that stuff happened in my demo games, but you might have different luck because it's BattleTech. also, I would say that you absolutely do want to play with 3-4 pilots instead of 4-5 pilots, because you're just going to hit more than without. 4-5 is the basic, of course, and you can tell at your players, but you can just say, I want this game to be a little bit quicker, so we're going to have 3-4 pilots. And that is going to make your game a lot faster, especially for the newbies who are going to have a hard time calculating everything. Now, what about maps? What maps do you play on? I would say absolutely go with maps that are fairly simple, but that do force new players to take into account the basics of movement. So level changes, woods, maybe water. You could leave water out, I think, because it might confuse some people. And line of sight. But not maps that have like a huge amount of woods, for example, blocking everything. You want for your guys to be able to, your newbies to be able to shoot at you. So don't go with line of sight blocking terrain everywhere. I would say the Game of Armored Combat desert maps are very good for this. There's some level changes, some woods, maybe some water. I think they're fine for this. I would probably not go with the beginner box maps. They're a little bit too open for my tastes, but your mileage will vary. Maybe you have a lot more maps than I do. So, before I demoed BattleTech to the players I demoed it to, I did have a think about all of this in quite some detail, and I was pretty happy with my experiences playing against newbies. They did like the game, and some of them do want to play it again at some point. Of course, you could always also play Alpha Strike, I guess, but I haven't played it enough to give any sort of amazing opinion on it quite yet. Maybe you have some ideas on how to demo Alpha Strike to people who haven't played any kind of BattleTech ever. So, have you demoed BattleTech to people? What are your experiences? What kinds of mechs would you take in a new player's game? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, that's pretty much the video for this time. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.